Folks, I am very excited about our guest tonight. He's someone that we all are connected to. At least if you're on Twitter, you absolutely know this person, and he feeds you on a daily basis. I know he feeds me quite a bit. So let's go back here. Our guest today seems to have eyes everywhere. He seems to be aware of everything that's happening in America of importance, and he reports on it. And you would think that he has 20 TV screens at home. I'm not sure that that's not the case, but I have a sneaking suspicion that he's got another way of dealing with it. He does some of the things that none of us would want to do, such as watching Fox News or News Nation or any of those other random MAGA channels. Our guest today is none other than Aaron Rupar. Aaron is one of two main accounts that posts clips, like incredibly important and timely clips about what's happening. And in a time where fake news is running amok and propaganda is outrageous, the important thing that Aaron brings to our conversation is that he posts the clips and lets you decide. He's not telling you how to feel about the news. He's just saying, look, this is it. So I am truly, truly thrilled to have him here with us today. And I hope you're ready to get into it, because I am. Let's go. Incredible person, incredible human being. Yes, famous. Yes. Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Storytime with BDD. I'm your host, BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad, and as I promised, with us today is none other than the illustrious, the famous, the well-read Aaron Rupar. Welcome, Aaron.
Howdy. Thanks for having me. What an introduction. That's really flattering. I appreciate it.
I meant every word, every syllable of it. Seriously. So I mentioned something about 20 TV screens. You don't have 20 TV screens, right?
No, actually, I have two monitors it's kind of my basic setup, but one of them is a multi-viewer. So I have, basically all the cable channels and then a bunch of streams on there too. So if there's big congressional hearings or like a Trump press conference, I'm kind of monitoring everything. You can't watch everything all at once, but I have eyes on as much as I can. And then I kind of tune in when, it seems like something is going to be really newsworthy and kind of go from there with clipping.
Interesting. So it's that Slipstream? Snapstream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Snapstream.
Yeah, to give you a little background, so when I started at Think Progress, RIP, I'm sure some of your viewers remember Think Progress from I was there from 2016 until 18. But one of the things when I started working there that I thought was really cool was they had TVs all over the newsroom that had like MSNBC, CNN, Fox, and this was before I started kind of clipping, but just in terms of monitoring news, it was so valuable to have screens on that had cable. And so Snapstream makes that possible, but then I have another product that I use for just the multi-viewer aspect. But then when I actually post clips, they're from Snapstream. So for anybody who's curious, in terms of whether you're with an organization or just as an individual, if you're curious about clipping, Snapstream is a good place to start for sure.
I also want to say you and I want to say ASIN, right, are like the two main like heavyweights on Twitter who are doing this. You guys are doing God's work, honestly, because without it, you are like the first place I go to see, all right, what's happening, right? When was it that you decided that this was something that you needed to do? Because I see your feed, right? And 1 out of 50 of your posts it'll be like, we went to see the Minnesota Timberwolves today. But the rest of it, you are like knee deep in C-SPAN, in Fox News, CNBC. Why? What made you decide to start doing this?
Yeah, I really kind of stumbled into it because when I was at Think Progress, we had a newsroom training on Snapstream in 2017. And so everybody, was like a mandatory thing that we had to do. And so I was there and it taught us how to use this product basically. And then a few nights later, I was at home and I had Fox on kind of in the background as I was doing other stuff. And John Kelly, who at that time was the White House chief of staff for Trump, was on with Laura Ingraham. And this was right after Charlottesville. And he did this interview where he was kind of making a case that the Confederate monuments were about heritage, not hate. And, was kind of pushing back on the idea that it was beyond the pale that Trump was defending the Charlottesville rioters. And, I heard this and I was kind of like, that would probably make for a pretty interesting clip, because there were a few accounts that were kind of doing work like that. Media Matters would put up clips once in a while. And so, I kind of had this thought of, let's try it out. I just had this training. I'm going to put this clip out there in the ether and see what happens on Twitter. So I post a clip and, by the time I woke up the next morning, it had like, 2,000-3,000 retweets. It was easily the most viral thing I'd ever posted, despite working in political journalism for quite a while at that point. So it kind of opened my eyes right away, just as kind of like a fluke, that there was a huge appetite for news clips. And so almost right away, I sort of incorporated it into my news routine, my workflow, because I was already monitoring a lot of the White House events and writing about them for Think Progress as it was. So it was pretty seamless to like just go the next step of like, I'm going to post some clips as I'm watching these events. Snapstream makes it pretty easy to do it in pretty close to real time. So it wasn't like it was really cutting into my workday that much. Right. And my account just started blowing up, ever since then. So yeah, there was just obviously kind of a niche for it and an appetite. And now here I am, nearly 10 years later, and I've really kind of made a living out of it. And now it's kind of, I publish a newsletter, obviously public notice. I write, probably like 25% of it. Then I have contributors who write the rest of it, who do great work. But a lot of my day is clipping, because there's just such a thirst for it among people who follow me. And it really ends up being kind of the lifeblood of what I do, because it brings in new followers who hopefully become newsletter subscribers, and we kind of go from there. But, it can be really time consuming. Like today, for instance, Scott Bessent was testifying before the House Financial Services Committee. And the thing that you realize as you do this, as long as I have, is that whenever there are these hearings before the House, they can literally take all day, because there's like 40 members. Each of them get 5 minutes of questioning. So, it takes real commitment. It's not something you can kind of dip into and out of. And that's why, there are, like you said, it's like ASIN, myself. There's a few other accounts that post clips as well, but I think we're kind of the big two. And for both of us, it's pretty much a full-time thing, because otherwise you're just going to miss too much stuff. You're not really going to know what you're looking at unless you're kind of trying to look at everything and have a sense of what's newsworthy and what isn't.
Yeah, I'm in awe, because like I also try to stay on top of the news, but it's impossible, right? There's so much that's going on right now, and it's not like I'm not trying to do what you do. Like, I don't want to do it at all. But I do have a very strong sense of FOMO. For those of you who don't know what FOMO is, it's fear of missing out. And I'm sure like you get that, like while you're sitting there watching that, House, a House session, you're like, damn, what's going on in the Oval Office? Like, what crazy shit is, right?
I have that all the time. Well, it usually, because like today, for instance, my son, who's 3, had his first, it's not even really like organized basketball, but he's like in a basketball kind of like camp, where it's just like an after school thing. He's in preschool, but I have FOMO because I go to something like that, like be a dad. But then like tonight, Trump had an interview on NBC that I ended up missing. Like I just saw some clips as I was in the Uber on the way back here, because I was being a dad. So like the FOMO usually works in that direction, where it's like, oh, I should be clipping right now. Because that's one of the things, like there are other people in the space. And so if I'm not clipping it, like one of my competitors will be, and then you're kind of like falling behind them. So the nice thing is that ASIN is based on the West Coast and I'm, in the Midwest. So I usually have like the terrain to myself between like when I wake up until like, basically 9 or 10 my time. So like we kind of work, he usually in the late night is getting more of like the late night, the Abby Phillips show on CNN, or like Hannity. which I still try to dip into when I can, but like the mornings
Yep.
are sort of where I shine and where I have the most attention because, I'm up and I'm kind of the only one doing it.
Fun fact for you guys out there, I actually met Aaron in person a few years back. I think, was that 2022?
I think it was 2022. Yep.
Yeah, at the White House. And that was that day when like a bunch of us took this now infamous photograph where like we're all together.
It was great to meet you guys, but I wish we wouldn't have taken that photo in hindsight.
I don't regret it at all. I thought it was fun. It was a moment. Hey, look, at least we're not the clowns holding up binders of nothingness,
Oh, I know.
Files.
No.
Okay. So we were just doing it just to have fun. But
no, I'm with you. There was, especially during the campaign or 2 years ago, 2024, which I was going to say last year, but now it's not last year anymore. But during the campaign, like oftentimes there'd be trolls in my mentions, just like spamming that photo, kind of like. So like it was great meeting you and Joe and everybody else who was there, Keith Edwards. But yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it would have been like, maybe I'll let's take a private photo, me and you, maybe post on Instagram or something. But yeah, I mean, no, it was really great. It was great to meet a lot of people who I still to this day, obviously, am friends with online, interact with. And now, we won't be going back to the White House until, hopefully, maybe 2029.
2028. Yeah.
Well, 28 now, because it'll be Trump the whole year
true.
Until 29.
Yeah.
But, maybe 29.
Fingers crossed, 2029.
Yeah.
So as I explained to you before, most of the audience already knows. And by the way, I think I might have accidentally said story time with BDD. This has been story time, but it is now the Defiant Weekly. My bad. My own show. But what I have started doing is I have a wheel of topics. And you guys have seen me do this before. It's a little bit like that wheel on, what the hell's the name of that show? Price is Right. And instead of coming up with money, this comes up with topics to discuss. And so I have here, let's go here. Our main topic is the Epstein files. What's he hiding? And then we have nationalize the voting. Blue Texas in 26, Minneapolis drawdown, fund ICE or ICE the Fahizi out. I just need the FBI to find ... Bad Bunny Super Bowl backlash, and then live questions for Aaron. So that's when you guys get to raise your hand and ask him a question live. And last but not least, there's Aaron answers a live question. So, wait a minute. Did I get that right? Live questions for
two
Aaron.
Live questions. That's okay.
No, personal questions.
Oh,
this one here. Aaron answers. Anyway.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
You're going to get to answer.
There's two Aaron answers questions, but that's fine. I can answer questions.
All right. I used to know what the hell was going on. All right. So, we're gonna take a spin right now, but I know where I want this to land, and if it doesn't land there, I'm putting it there because we obviously have to talk about this.
Sure.
Wait. Ha ha!
Is that the one that you wanted?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
it has landed on Epstein hiding. What's he hiding? Okay, so the Epstein files are out. So thus far, a little over 3 million have been released. I believe there are still 3.5 left to go. And just days after they released 3 million more files, Donald Trump is like, well, nobody wants to see this stuff, right? This is pretty much it's a done deal, so let's move on, as he said yesterday, right? Can you hear me there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Aaron posted here a question From Caitlin Collins saying, on the Epstein files, Elon Musk was in there and so was Howard Lutnick. Did you read those new files? Trump's answer is no, I have a lot of things I'm doing. I don't know. You mentioned two names. I'm sure they're fine. I think it's time for the country to get on to something else. Now, Aaron, for someone like you who has been following this story since it came out, what's your take on that?
My take is that I think the worst stuff we haven't seen yet. I think that's probably pretty obvious, but Blanche, the deputy AG, has been very transparent about this. I mean, he basically said during a news conference he had last week that we collected 6 million documents. We're only releasing 3. And he mentioned that they over collected, which was kind of his excuse. And then he also mentioned that anything pertaining to an active investigation, they're not releasing. So, I mean, I would be completely guessing in terms of like what exactly is in those files. But, I do think for Democrats, like this is a huge opportunity to basically every redaction in there, they should be hammering as like, this proves Trump's guilt. Like, why are they covering this up? Let's see the names. And I believe Blanche is, part of the process here is that Dems can look at the unredacted documents, like in a SCIF or like, so there might be ways to kind of drill down with these redactions at least, even if you can't necessarily know what's in the files that aren't being released. So I don't know, man. I mean, like obviously we know about some of the comments Trump had about Epstein that, Epstein said that they were best friends and Trump talked about how he likes young women as much as he does, in an interview he did 25 years ago. And the thing that's kind of crazy about, and I can't say that I've read all of the 3 million documents that have been released, but obviously I've tracked it very closely in terms of reporting and people who have really digged into all of them. Like, Epstein, the whole gravitational pull of him was around kind of like these wild sex parties, right? I mean, you had Elon Musk kind of like very thirsty to hang out. And, it seemed like that was kind of like why people wanted to hang out with him. And so I'm assuming that's why, obviously, why Trump wanted to hang out with him too. And that was kind of like a big part of their relationship. We saw the letter that Trump wrote to him, for his birthday. I think that was
he denied.
Yeah, which he denied. But I mean, come on. So yeah, I'm assuming there's really bad stuff in there. I'm assuming that, Todd Blanche is lying, that, there's nothing incriminating and that, and I hope that someday that we see it, but, I feel like it's kind of a perilous moment with the cover up right now, because obviously there's a lot of heat being directed toward other people who are named in the files. And there's a lot of scrutiny this week. These other figures that are not Trump, obviously Bill Clinton is a big target of the Republicans right now. Right. But with just the pace of news, like now, are we going to go to war with Iran? Like everything is happening here in Minneapolis, like Ohio could be next for kind of like some sort of big ICE targeting. I feel like people are going to kind of, I hope I'm wrong, but I just suspect people are going to eventually just kind of move on here. And I'm not quite sure like what levers there are, until we get an election where maybe if Dems could retake the House and or the Senate and like really do some investigations, have subpoena power to really get to the bottom of this. Like, I kind of worry that people are just going to eventually move on and that, it'll be something that obviously follows Trump. And, but it's kind of incumbent on Dems, I think, to really use this politically and hammer that these redactions are meant to protect Trump. Let's see some of these names that are being withheld and use it as a political weapon, because I don't think we're going to get satisfaction in terms of like the documents that aren't being released, the redactions, but hopefully we can at least make some political hay out of it.
So you're pretty sure that despite all of these files being dropped, that no prosecutions will come of them?
I mean, is the DOJ like, they probably love to prosecute some of the Dems who are in there, like the Trump opponents, but I mean, the DOJ is not going to prosecute anybody in Trump's orbit, of course, I mean, maybe some future DOJ could. But I really doubt it. I mean, I think obviously the cover up is all encompassing in the DOJ, and that's what they're up to. They're not really up to trying to bring justice to the victims. So yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit, I guess I'm a little, more bearish on the Epstein files story in terms of like the damage it can do to Trump at this point. Because I think they've run a pretty effective cover up, and like you can do that when you have all of the power and when Republicans aren't conducting any oversight. And the other thing that I think is, and this is just kind of the reality, is that, there was a lawsuit about a decade ago that was Epstein related that specifically accused Trump of assault. And that lawsuit was dropped during the 2016 campaign.
Oh, but was that since then, Katie Johnson one?
I think that's right. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but there's been at least the reason I bring that up is because it's not as though Trump has never been accused of misconduct in relation to Epstein of a nature that goes beyond kind of like nudity or stuff that we already know. The stuff that he said about Epstein liking young girls, and he does too, and that sort of thing. But we had Massey and we had Marjorie Taylor Greene, who spent a lot of time with the survivors. And at no point did any of the survivors who have been kind of in the public arena in recent months accuse Trump of misconduct. In fact, some of them have said, like, my interactions with him, he was always nice and gentlemanly and things like this. So I think as long as that's the case, like, I don't really know what we're looking for. I'm sure that there is incriminating stuff in the files that have not been released. Just a question of like, how do we get them? And maybe if you brought in like a really smart lawyer, there might be some levers that I'm not aware of. But I think basically it's going to come down to, can Dems retake power in November, at least in the House, have subpoena power, and maybe gain some traction that way? Because, unfortunately, we saw it yesterday with Mike Johnson and this stuff now with trying to nationalize the vote and the SAVE Act. Like, they're all in, on basically doing whatever Trump wants them to do to hold power. And I think Epstein is kind of a part of that, where they're all in on the cover up. Like, they don't, James Comer doesn't want to get to the bottom of this. He wants to protect Trump. And as long as that's the case, it's going to be pretty tough for Dems.
What's extremely disappointing to me is that people frequently talk about the Epstein files in terms of its political impact, right? The impact that it's going to have on Trump and on the Republican Party and the Democratic Party and who's exposed, et cetera, et cetera. Bill and Hillary Clinton, for some reason, they've been out of public service for, almost a decade now. So what bugs me is that despite the fact that there are still victims who, by the way, have not even been mentioned by Donald Trump. And when Caitlin Collins yesterday, you captured that clip. Out of all the shitty things that I've seen him do, I was really appalled. I was appalled by that. And I'm glad that his fire hose of insanity and nudity and disgustingness has not numbed me to when he does things like when Caitlin Collins asked him, what do you have to say about the survivors of Epstein? And she didn't even get to finish her sentence. He jumped on her. He jumped on her case and says, why don't you smile more? I've never seen you smile. And like, what what? You have not once said, I feel for those victims. That's such low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
I feel for the victims. You know who he did wish well to? Ghislaine Maxwell, for crying out loud. And not only did he wish her well, but he made sure that Todd Blanche feathered her bed and made it nice and easy for her in a minimum security prison where she could just get her what kind of dog is that? The emotional support dog, and just special meals. And at the bottom of all this, there are the survivors, the victims who, if all they want is some justice, and they haven't even arrested one rich pedophile yet. And there are people who are 12, 13 years old, probably younger, who were dragged into that life against their will. And the rich and powerful, once again, are protected from it.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's pretty obvious that Trump is still hiding a lot here, is that whenever he's asked about it, his responses are so kind of absurd, where it's like, country just has to move on. What about Bill Clinton and Hillary? Like, this is a Democratic issue now. And it's just so preposterous, where, like a normal person, like you were saying, would be, my heart goes out to the victims. That's so horrible what they went through. And, it would not be that hard for him to kind of just be normal. But because it's clearly a sore spot for him, that to me, where there's smoke, there's fire. It's like there's a lot of smoke in the way that Trump responds to these questions.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that there's more there. And I hope that someday we learn about it. But then, there's the other part of me that's like, look, this guy has been accused of sexual misconduct by like dozens of women. He, was in a court of law found liable for sexual assault in the E. Jean Carroll case, and then defaming her subsequently. Like, I don't know. I mean, if there was some like smoking gun in the Epstein files, would it really like change our politics that much. I just feel like people are so dug in on Trump at this point that like, I mean, you know, it's probably the truest thing he ever said is I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and my supporters wouldn't care. I mean, there's a lot of, as we found out over the past decade, like there's a lot of truth to that. And so, you know, I really wonder. I mean, he was caught on tape bragging about groping women, you know, without their consent. Yep. And that was kind of, you know, once we kind of got through that unfortunate milestone of Trump, you know, being recorded, bragging about assaulting women, and then he wins the presidency like a month later. I mean, all bets were kind of off after that. So yeah, I'm just kind of deeply skeptical, you know, even if there was some video that was highly incriminating of Trump himself, his supporters would find some way to spin it, right? I mean, we'd be back, his approval would maybe go from like 40 to 38%, you know, and then we'd just be having the same conversation. So I don't know, maybe that's just because I've done this for so long, and, you know, basically covered Trump his whole campaign in 2016 through his, you know, both terms of his presidency and the years in between. And it's just, you know, it's crazy to me that, you know, it's like I'm getting disturbing reports every day that Trump is actually bad, you know, and it's like, how have people not figured this out yet? You know, it makes me feel nuts.
Yeah. Like, and I think I can't even make up my mind what drives me crazier is that he does this thing where he repeats bullshit over and over and over, and it's like the it's the Jedi mind trick for idiots, you know. And like yesterday, one of the clips, I think I saw this on your page, was when he said, "I'm innocent, very innocent." Yes. But dude, like if you were very innocent, when Caitlin Collins asked you about the victims, you could have summoned some little morsel, some crumb of humanity and said something close to what you said about Ghislaine Maxwell. Number two, if you were so damn innocent, you wouldn't have had 1,000 agents poring over those Epstein files for months and months and months, flagging every instance where your name appears, which, by the way, let me get this up on the screen here. Yeah. So, by the way, Trump's name appears, according to the New York Times, Trump's name appears more than 5,300. Oh, wait, excuse me, in 5,300 files. And I think I saw it was somewhere upwards of 30,000 mentions total. So I was curious. I wanted to see, compared to Darth Vader, Saruman, and he who shall not be named, Voldemort, how many times their names appeared in their trilogies, right? So Darth Vader's name is spoken in dialogue a combined total of 60 to 70 times across the three films. Saruman in The Lord of the Rings, the movie trilogy, his name is spoken 40 to 50 times. In the books, you know, those big fat trilogy books, it's 150 to 200 times Saruman's name is listed. And Voldemort, here's the kicker, Voldemort in all 8 films, his name is spoken, wow, that's weird, 83 times total, but 1,250 times written in the books. And it's still only a fraction of the amount of times that Donald Trump's name is listed in the Epstein files. Are you kidding me, bro?
Yeah, you know, and I feel a little bit bad because actually my brother over the last weekend was like, I really expected more from you on the Epstein files. Like, you've barely been posting about it. And I'm like, dude, there's 3 million files here, man. Like, I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, I'd have to cancel the next like month of my life to. So, you know, and so I am kind of going on other, you know, the other sources of reporting in terms of the content of a lot of these files. But, you know, and you know, there obviously last weekend, there were some that looked really bad for Trump that made specific allegations of misconduct. And then, you know, Midas Touch was all over it where like they were deleted right away. Kind of bizarre to me, you know, and so I wonder, are those pages still down? I guess I'm not sure if those were taken down.
No, they did put them back up.
They put it back up.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. Yeah, but the thing that sticks with me is Blanche's initial news conference where he, you know, very upfront said, we're releasing 3 million documents today. We have 3 million more, but we over collected. And it's like, oh, okay. So I kind of see what the game is here. So again, I mean, that's why this upcoming election is so key. At least get the House back for Democrats where you have subpoena power. You can do real investigations. Yeah. Then we can work from there. Until then, we're just going to be guessing, I fear.
Yeah, I like as I'm watching your clips, you know, with whether it's Trump speaking or Scott Bessent or Kevin, what's that?
Hassett.
God damn, I can't stand these smarmy, smiling, smug idiots, you know, who are just lying to us through their teeth. And everyone, Kristi Noem, the whole, nobody in that administration or regime, excuse me, nobody in that regime can be trusted. And that includes Marco Rubio, who I thought was at one point in my head, he was like the only respectable guy there, but now even he's sold out.
And he made every Democrat look bad because wasn't it 99-0 was his confirmation vote? And I get what the logic was at the time for that, but are you on Blue Sky or are you just on X?
I am.
Okay, because like on Blue Sky, almost every time I post about Rubio, you know, there'll be liberals either quote posting or in my replies kind of like 99-0, like every Dem. You know, so they just kind of, it's going to stick with all these Democratic senators that they voted for him.
Yeah.
Again, I get why they did it, but yeah, I mean, it's, and
why do you think they did it?
Well, because I think that they viewed it as like, this is the best that we're going to get. You know, I mean, you have to remember at that time we were talking about Matt Gaetz as AG and like, you know, Rubio at least was someone who had the right credentials being a senator who had worked, you know, in the foreign policy realm a lot. So I think, you know, you kind of hold your nose and it's like, well, at least he, you know, in the grand scheme of people that Trump could pick, he's at least acceptable. So I think that was the rationale. But, you know, I often wonder about that kind of, you know, along the lines of what you're saying. It's like, how do these people live with themselves? Honestly, like where you're just lying every day. And like, you know, a lot of these people profess to be Christians and, you know, you got Carolyn Leavitt with her cross necklace or like Mike Johnson, who yesterday was trying to scripture explain to the Pope. You know, after the Pope criticized Trump's immigration policies, he's like, well, actually, in the Bible, walls and borders are good, you know, and it's like, I just don't understand how you get up and kind of do this every day. I mean, maybe it's just, I don't know if it's more like the power aspect, which I'm assuming people kind of get addicted to the power more than anything. Cause like, you know, these people they can make money any number of different ways. Like, I don't think you need to be, you know, Mike Johnson needs to have his position as speaker to be wealthy. So I really do think it's more you kind of get hung up on the power. And then I think at a certain point, I'm sure like stubbornness kind of kicks in where it's like, I've supported this guy for so long, like I can't really change course now. And I'm sure that's the case with a lot of Trump supporters who aren't in positions of power, but like, it's really hard to admit that you've been wrong, you know, after a decade or like however many years people have supported him. So, you know, I see it a lot with like kind of family members that support him or like, and the big variable to me is like, if we really have a bad year economically where, you know, let's say, we know we have Kevin Warsh, who might be the new Fed chair. Let's say that he cuts rates like Trump wants him to do, and then inflation spikes. And we still have kind of a sluggish job market. Like, would that be enough, you know, to kind of put Trump from being at 40% down to like 35%, where it becomes really dire and Republicans have to kind of head for the life rafts, you know, because it's like, we got to distance ourselves or we're going to lose. I
wonder if in inflation spikes, will we even know the real deal? Will we know the real story, or will it be papered over by people in Trump's regime? Because again, there's no truth. The last time they gave him a bad report about, I think it was employment, didn't he fire that person in that what was it, I forget the name of it. It's
Bureau of Labor Statistics,
the BLS. That's right. So, you know, there's nobody of any who cares about a reputation, because that whole ecosystem is set up so that when they're finished in his regime, they go on to a job as a commentator for Fox News or for Newsmax or whatever it is. None of them are being held accountable, because they're basically, their opinions, whether they're and their propaganda, their lies, are being propped up by an ecosystem that rewards the bullshit. You know, so
I think I would, the thing I would say on that is I think it's harder to lie about the economy because people encounter it directly, whether that's you're going to the store or you're looking for a job or your kid's looking for a job or you're looking for housing. Like there are, it's tough. You can maybe lie a little bit on the margins, and say, oh, we revised the job numbers last month up, so the unemployment rate is actually 4 instead of 4.2 or something. But over the long haul, I think people are going to understand what the reality is. We've seen that, and that's the big difference. Like between Trump 1 and Trump 2, like the economy is definitely weaker now than it was in 2018. Kind of the comparable time in Trump's first term. And I think that, explains a little bit of his weakness. But the other thing that, that again, like I don't want to be too kind of like cynical, but, Trump won at this point, in 2018, his approval was like kind of the same as it is now. I mean, it might be down like 1 or 2 points right now. And so again, it just gets back to like people are so dug in on this guy and like either you love him or you hate him. I will say when you kind of go below the hood of some of the polling, the strong approve and strong disapprove has some concerning numbers for Trump where his strong approval is down, his strong disapproval is way up. And so like now that we're into an election year and like, pretty soon there's going to be kind of full-time campaigning going on. And then I think we're going to have kind of different dynamics. We've already seen a lot of Republicans retire. I think just today I saw this as I was logging on with you that Barry Loudermilk, who's like a very Trumpy Georgia House member, I think he announced he's not running again this year. Like, there's going to be some headwinds. And I think the fact that his support is softer than it was. But like, again, like I come back to like all of this, the economy is not nearly as good as it was the first term. He's way crazier and he's like kind of wrecking, our institutions, our global alliances. And yet, his approval is like 40 versus 41. So it's like, it's hard, yeah.
Makes no sense. Yeah. All right. Let me return to the wheel now and see what our next topic is going to be. Okay. Fund ICE or ICE out. Now, as you know, as you know as well as anybody else, that the House just finished voting, excuse me, on that package, and they passed it. So I have seen lots of Democrats who are leery about using certain words like defund. They don't want to use defund. They don't want to use abolish. But when I don't know if I'm sure you saw the testimony from some of the victims of ICE yesterday, and I don't personally, I don't feel like the shit that was done to like that disabled woman who was dragged out of her car and slammed to the ground and mistreated and denied medical attention and medication. I don't know how you how do you retrain these people? How do you reel them in? Because they're already people with anger issues. These are people who have not been trained at all or barely trained, and they don't seem to have like that bare minimum amount of humanity that says, like, in the back of your head, wait a minute, I shouldn't be treating this person like that. I know I have a badge, but that doesn't entitle me to mistreat this teenage kid, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're aware that I live in Minneapolis right now. So like,
I know that.
Yeah, okay,
that's one of the items on my.
Like, it's totally upended life here in the sense that every day, like I'm for our local Signal kind of rapid response. Like a couple of days ago, ICE was at a local restaurant here, and so like you get kind of dispatched if you're nearby to kind of go and monitor and like observe and record. And the way that ICE has conducted itself here, to me, is obviously beyond salvaging. Now it's tricky. We don't need to get too into the weeds with this, but because of the big beautiful bill, ICE has a certain level of funding that's equivalent with like many large militaries around the world that they have basically through Trump's term. And so I don't really think there's any way short of like building a majority in Congress, which Dems probably aren't going to be able to do. They're not going to get enough Republicans to switch over, to basically defund ICE or like really curtail it. But I think you have to have the fight if you are a Democrat. And there's been a lot of pressure here on, obviously, Klobuchar and Tina Smith, who have been pretty strong on it. But we'll see now. There's a 2-week window where they have to negotiate, a DHS funding bill, and I'm hoping that there are real reforms in there. Like my expectations aren't super high, but I think at the very least, the unmasking of agents, like that's, I've been feeling kind of, this is another thing that's made me feel like I'm on crazy pills, is hearing these Republicans over the past week be like, oh, we can't possibly unmask the ICE agents because their families are at risk. They're being doxxed and people are showing up at their homes. And like, this is all just kind of like fantasy land stuff. Like, I don't think there's any actual stories about this happening. It's kind of like thought experiments. Like, what if someone showed up at their house? So it's like, meanwhile, like 2 people here in Minneapolis have been gunned down by, one by Border Patrol, one by ICE. Like there was a video just yesterday of these ICE agents drawing guns on people who were tracking them. They definitely have the demeanor of like a street gang, more so law enforcement. And, actually later tonight there's a fundraiser that Tim Fullerton, who you might know, organized for, Minneapolis related causes. Mayor Fry is going to be on it, and I'm part of like a panel discussion with him. And one of the things that I plan to ask him about is like, what can the city do just from a public safety standpoint to try to rein in ICE even a little bit? Because like, as there's been all this talk of a drawdown in Trump's new tone, as CNN put it today, that he's being a little bit softer in some of his rhetoric about Minneapolis. While this is happening, like they're still drawing guns on people. They're still driving recklessly around the city. And ultimately, it is kind of a numbers game where even after this quote unquote drawdown, they're going from like 3,000 federal agents to something like 2,300. But the Minneapolis police force is like 500 cops. So I get that, I actually have a good friend here who works for the park board. And on Sunday, there was an incident at a nearby rec center where I don't even know what kind of presaged it, but ICE showed up, they gassed a bunch of people in this park. And then when, I talked to some people at the city of Minneapolis about this, and their line was basically like, look, that happened in a park. Like, the police didn't even pertain to them because like there's park police here, but there's something like 50 park officers. So what are, are they supposed to like, you have a throwdown with ICE or try to arrest these guys? Like, so it's really just kind of untenable even after the drawdown. So yeah, ICE definitely needs to be dramatically reformed and kind of rebranded, and I think kind of like torn down and built back up. There has to be some, we have to have some form of immigration enforcement in this country. I've never been like a defund the police guy. But especially here in this city, given all that we've lived through, given the 2 people have been killed, the idea that Democrats wouldn't kind of fight all the way to the mat on this, I think would be really demoralizing for people. So, the fight's upon us right now. Like, let's see what kind of concessions they can get. I don't expect them to defund ICE. I don't expect them to abolish ICE, but let's at least make sure that the next time that they do brutalize someone, which seems like it's almost a daily occurrence, that we still aren't left guessing over who the officers are, because we only know the 2 Border Patrol agents who shot Alex Preddy because of independent reporting. I think it was Jacqueline Sweet, who's a contributor to The Intercept, somehow like went back. They were involved in some previous incidents and identified both of them. So we know their names now, but the government has never announced who these guys are. We don't know where they are. So it's again, they have more of the demeanor of like a, like a mob or street gang than they do law enforcement. Yeah. That's just not tenable.
Aaron, I got to hand it to you and your fellow Minnesotans, Minneapolians. Is that right?
Minneapolitans? I don't know.
We'll go with that.
Minneapolis.
I got to hand it to you guys because from outside looking in, it absolutely looks as though ICE has been trying to antagonize, instigate, escalate. They're trying to provoke some kind of visceral reaction from your citizens. And for the most part, you guys have you've maintained some discipline and remained peaceful. I love when I'm watching the videos, half of these videos, all you hear are the whistles blowing, and which is great. It looks to me as though the entire community was like, fuck that. Let's stand tall against these jackasses, these jackbooted thugs, and not let them take our people. How is that is that feeling in Minneapolis? Is it pervasive or like everywhere? Is everyone against ICE there, or are there some people who are like, oh yeah, I voted for this?
Oh, in Minneapolis proper, I would say ICE's approval rating is probably like 1%. Like I have yet to meet an actual Minneapolis resident who is anything but like totally appalled by this. Now, you do get some of the more like exurban Republicans or outstate, and I've said this in a couple different forms. I think I posted on social media that, like, of course, like the reason that ICE is even here is the whole like Somali fraud scandal, the Nick Shirley video. Had Republicans just kind of stuck with that, like, oh, there's this huge fraud in Minnesota, and like Walz turned a blind eye to it, and this is just kind of like, government run amok. We need to drain the swamp. Like that could have been a potent political weapon for Republicans. But because it turned into like this racist hate campaign against Somalis, and because now we've had people gunned down here, like the whole kind of the topic has totally shifted, and people have kind of completely, the fraud thing is like totally on the back burner. And, I think Republicans are going to get like totally wiped out here in Minnesota this year. But yeah, I mean, so people on the ground here in the city, I mean, everybody's just absolutely horrified about what ICE is up to and really trying their best to protect their neighbors. And I think even, that's kind of more of like a regional sentiment, because as things have gotten tougher for ICE in the city, they've become more active in the suburbs here, which are a little bit less organized in terms of the resistance. Uh-huh. But while they do that, I mean, then that kind of like radicalizes people in the suburbs against them too, because, even in my hometown, which is Forest Lake, Minnesota, which is an exurb, my mom still lives up there. Like they've closed down Mexican restaurants because ICE is active up there. And like, even in these places that are quite red, I don't think what ICE is up to has been popular, because the lived experience of people is that these are our neighbors. Like these are not violent criminals. Like, even if it's someone who may not be, have like legal status to be here, in almost every instance, these are community members. These are people whose children are citizens. And so that's where like there was always this perception, oh, we got to get the violent criminal illegal aliens out. And it's like, when you kind of pull that question, sure. Like if it's, a convicted criminal or something like that, okay, they should be deported. I think most people can agree with that. But those are kind of like the edge cases. I mean, the studies that have been done on this show that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at lesser rates than native-born Americans.
That's right.
So yeah, it just was always kind of this myth. And when the rubber meets the road of the actual enforcement, like the execution of mass deportation, you see that it's like, it's not popular, and it won't be popular because it's uprooting and disrupting communities, and it's taking out valued members of the community, and breaking up families and just kind of like terrorizing people. And obviously nobody is really down with that.
70% of the people, of the undocumented immigrants that have been apprehended, detained, arrested, etc., have no criminal record. So like, the promise that he made, during his mass deportation campaign last year or 2 years ago, was that he was going after the worst of the worst. Instead, what he's done is he's gone after people who are like, business owners, they're bakers, and and they're working hospitality and farming, and people going to school, people who have raised United States Marines, for crying out loud. So they are taking people who are contributing to our society, and they're brutalizing them. And in a lot of and increasing cases, we see, like with Renee Good and Alex Preddy, they're killing them. And what are you guys going? What is the plan now that Tom Homan is supposed to be coming in and and drawing things down and tamping down the action there? I mean, is there
nothing has changed?
Is there a sense of fatigue from your fellow Minneapolis?
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. It's not good because it's really been disruptive, to people's lives on multiple levels, and especially like I've started to see more and more from like small business owners where like this is really bad for them because people aren't like going out as much. It's just kind of scary. And again, it's not just people who are directly affected because they're either an immigrant community or their family, they have immigrants in their family, sort of thing. Like even just going out and running errands, when ICE is blasting through intersections and gassing people kind of at random, like even my family, like with our kids, we've kept them home a lot more and done a lot less because it's just risky. There's kind of this sense of like simmering low level conflict at all times, because ICE, they're active throughout the day into the evening. They're doing raids, like, they've been harassing people at bus stops and outside of schools. And, there was just a lawsuit today from a major school district in Fridley, which is like an inner ring suburb, suing to get ICE like away from the school, because like they hang out right around the entrances, they hang out at bus stops. So yeah, I mean, it's really doing damage for sure. And people are fatigued. But it's like, I don't really know what the end game is. I mean, I think it's probably just kind of waiting it out because, Trump got bored in Chicago and in LA, and like there's kind of diminishing returns politically for this stuff. So like, there's some thought now that Springfield, Ohio might be the next target because of the Haitian community there. I don't know. So I guess we're just kind of like in this holding pattern of like waiting it out. Sadly, I mean, I think our elected officials locally, both, the mayor and then upward from there, our representatives and senators, like they go on TV and they say the right things. And I think that they want to help, but like, there's only so much you can really do, because like, this is obviously a federal government action that's Trump has a lot of control over with DHS. And as long as Republicans are on board, and not really conducting any oversight, I don't really know what you do. So, I mean, I hope that things change. Like ICE definitely needs to get out of here for the sake of this community. And again, I mean, there were just videos yesterday of them drawing guns on people. Like it feels like it's only a matter of time before they kill someone else. And that's terrible because, as you mentioned earlier, you said that people haven't been taking the bait and that, and that's very true. That's very much true. But like Renee Good didn't really take the bait and she got killed. Peretti, just got basically killed for trying to defend this other woman who had been shoved down. Like it's not like nobody's taking the bait and people are still getting killed.
Renee Good's last words were, "I'm not mad at you." Like, and then Alex Peretti died trying to help a woman up off the ground who had been, and he himself was pepper sprayed in the face. Like, I couldn't get over that. Like, I was like, if it were me, I hate to say it, but like, I'm trying to get that shit out of my eyes. Like you can't worry about somebody else, but that's the kind of guy he was. And it's really, really sad. So I hope, this past week we saw Texas, and that's one of the other items that I have on my list here. I'm just going to plow through it. We saw a plus 17 Trump district go for Democrats plus 14 by 14 points. So that's a total of a 31 point shift. And, I would consider you a pundit, maybe a journalist / pundit. So you see it all. So in your opinion, is this the year? Is this the year that Democrats finally turn Texas blue? And is ICE lending a hand in that? Because some of the returns that I heard was that people were sending a message. They are not happy with how this deportation thing is unfolding. They signed on. They voted for getting rid of the worst of the worst, but they're seeing something else entirely.
I wouldn't rule it out. Most of the prognosticators that I pay attention to, whether it be like G. Elliott Morris or, more of the aggregators, still have the Texas race pretty solidly red. But, things are obviously changing really quickly. And when you project the election results from 2025 and then into this year, there's been a shift of it's like D plus 12 or 13. And obviously, it's hard to extrapolate from like a House election in Texas to like what's going to happen nationally in the midterms. But, even if it's like a D plus 6 or 7, like you're getting into wave territory there. So, certainly I think the odds of Dems retaking the House are really high. And then even the Senate, I'm sure they're still underdogs, but there's definitely a pathway to doing it. And if Texas goes blue, then we're talking about like just a crazy landslide at that point. So let's hope and pray. And the other thing with Texas, specifically in the Senate race, is that both Republicans who are in that race are like pretty bad candidates. I mean, Cornyn isn't very popular with MAGA. Abbott, obviously, it's not Abbott, it's Paxton, right? Who's in the primary there?
Ken Paxton, yeah.
Yeah, Ken Paxton, who, was nearly impeached as the attorney general. And he's got a ton of baggage. So, I guess I couldn't really rule it out. As I say that, it almost like, I feel like, it's like having like a shock collar on, where it's like, how many years have we gone through this in Texas? It feels like this has been for a decade now. We've been talking about, oh, is Texas going to go blue? Is Texas going to go blue? And then it doesn't. But, we have to keep in mind that Trump isn't on the ballot this year, which works against Republicans whenever that's the case. The national environment is really bad for Republicans. And the way that the news is trending this year, I mean, do we really think it's going to get better for Republicans this year? The economic news isn't great. Trump obviously is fraying our alliances around the world. Like, he's kind of terrorizing communities here in America. So, I mean, I hate that is something that we have to kind of factor in as like a positive politically, where it's like, oh, it's good that things are so bad because then, maybe Republicans will lose this year. But I would say, I certainly wouldn't say with any confidence that Texas is going to turn blue. But I will say that if you want to argue that it will, you could put together a pretty strong argument. I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, that's crazy. It's just, we have a lot of history now where it's like the, we get our hopes up every cycle and then it doesn't quite work out. But there's some unique factors, I think, this time around.
You mean,
yeah,
like
there
Lucy.
You go. There's the image right there. Perfect. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I feel the same way. I feel like I'm cautiously optimistic because I've been burnt so many times before. I was like with Beto. Remember?
Yep.
Beto O'Rourke seemed like how the hell is Texas still reelecting Ted Cruz, whose own wife probably doesn't love him anymore? He couldn't even defend him.
It's wild to look back because, I mean, that was a very close election. Beto lost by under 2 points. Ted did, he got over 50%. But, again, I mean, that's pretty, I think it was even, because then it was Colin Allred last cycle, right? And he was not as close, I don't think, as Beto was. But in any event, I mean, it's much worse for Republicans, obviously, now than it was even in 2018. And Ted Cruz, again, won, by just over 1 point. So when you kind of look at it that way, there's really no reason that Texas couldn't go blue. You
just reminded me when you mentioned Colin Allred, right? I want to say something to the audience here, right? I like Colin Allred. I like James Tallarico, and of course, I like Jasmine Crockett, right? If I had to pick out of the three of them, I love Jasmine Crockett. I love her energy. I like what she brings to the thing. And people are having some kind of debate about, do you want to win? And said, look, we can support our candidates without tearing down the other two, for crying out loud. Okay? Look, if you want to win, keep this in your mind. One of the three is going to win. Do you want to contribute to tearing them down so that if your person ends up not winning, now the Republicans have some ammo to use against them? Stop it. Let's, support who the hell you're going to support without kicking the other two down. All right? It's that simple. All three are fine candidates. You might have an opinion who's better or worse or whatever. Keep that shit to yourself. All right? Let's win. If we're going to win, we're not going to win by being like a bucket full of crabs and pulling the crab down that's closest to the top, for crying out loud. Can I get an amen?
Oh, absolutely. Amen. I think that's something, and probably in your case too, where the longer you do this, the more kind of like humbleness I have about, I think a lot of punditry are people just kind of projecting their own preferences onto other voters who have very different ideas about the world. So like, let's let the primary happen. Let's hope that it doesn't get like too negative where someone doesn't emerge really damaged from it. But like, I think, Tallarico has a lot of things that I like, and Jasmine Crockett has a lot of things that I like. And, the Republicans are going to have a tough primary there too. So, I let the voters kind of in their collective wisdom sort it out. I feel the same way in Maine, where like a guy like Plattner is not my cup of tea really. But if he wins the primary, so be it. I mean, the main thing is obviously trying to get Dems to have some more power, next year, so we can put a check on Trump. And, we're not going to do that by like purity testing all of our candidates and, tearing them down from the inside rather than kind of like letting the process play out. Let's see who wins and kind of go from there. So yeah, I'm really making almost an editorial decision with my newsletter and my social media posting to not take sides in primaries on the Democratic side. Like, there's a lot of other things to cover, unless there's something that we can add that's more kind of like analytical. I really don't want to be doing the punditry game of like, here's why Jasmine Crockett can't win in Texas, because I don't think anybody really knows that, you know. So
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
I love how you put that. I think there's you mentioned something about reasons why Democrats might be a little leery about who ends up winning with these purity tests, and it's because a guy like John Fetterman ended up like, or Kristen Sinema, you know, they ended up changing their stripes. You know, we thought they were one way and they ended up being another way, and it feels like, you know, we got the rug pulled out from under us. And I don't get that same vibe from the three candidates in Texas. Although, you know, frankly, honestly, I didn't get that vibe from John Fetterman. I was, I was completely bamboozled by him. I was supportive of him. Even after he had the stroke, I was like, hey, look, that guy just needs to recover. And now he's like a regular on Fox News, and he feels very traitorous to me.
Right. And, you know, the irony is that he was the progressive choice, you know, and Connor Lamb was the squishy centrist. And now, you know, Lamb has kind of become like a social media darling, you know, like really incisive critiques of the Trump administration, and Fetterman's at Mar-a-Lago, you know, hobnobbing with Trump. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of shows. I mean, Fetterman, obviously, there were some extenuating circumstances with the stroke that he had, and who knows what impact, you know, that had on him. But yeah, I mean, I think Tallarico or Crockett. I'm not even aware of who the third candidate is. Who's the third candidate in that race?
Colin Allred, isn't it?
No, he dropped out of the race. He's running for a House seat, I'm pretty sure.
Oh,
yeah. He announced, it was a couple months ago, he announced that he's not in the Senate race. I think he pretty much got out when Crockett got in.
Interesting. I don't know why his name is in people's mouth, because he's been trending the past few days, having to do. Oh, you know what? There was an argument whether Tallarico called him a mediocre black man, I think was the. Yeah, so I assumed that Colin Allred was in it. So thank you for correcting that for me.
No, he's running in a House for a House seat, which he announced that he was getting out of the Senate race to run for the House. But then it turns out, I think he's going to have a pretty tough primary in his House race as well. Let me see if I can figure this out quickly, because I believe it's like Greg Casar or someone like that who he's in the primary against. Maybe someone in the chat knows. Ooh. And I got to give you a 2-minute warning here, because I do have that event with Jacob Fry in about 10 minutes. So
do we have time for one more wheel spin?
It'd have to be like a 2 or 3 minute one. We can do lightning round.
Let's go. Okay, it landed on Bad Bunny backlash. So basically, the story here is that MAGA is having a fit. They're having a big sad because Bad Bunny, the NFL had the audacity to choose someone who is not even American like Bad Bunny. Except, what's the problem here, Aaron?
That he's an American citizen and like the most popular artist in the world. Yeah, it's crazy. It's totally crazy. Yeah, I mean, it goes to show kind of how culturally out of touch a lot of Trumpers are. That they, you know, I mean, I'm in my 40s now. I'm not going to say that I'm the most in touch with kind of youth culture or anything like that, but I'm aware of Bad Bunny. I'm aware that I think he's like the #1 artist globally on Spotify, you know, in terms of like total streams and everything. So, and like, he's not, you know, I mean, he's just kind of like a common sense. I mean, certainly, you know, he's endorsed Democratic politicians. I don't know formally, but like, it's clear that he supports Democrats, but not in some like kind of extremist way, or he's not some radical. Yeah. I mean, he's kind of like a normie guy, it seems like. Yeah. And I don't know, it's funny. I mean, I'm sure you saw JD Vance. Oh, I'm going to be watching the Turning Point USA halftime show with my buddy Kid Rock. And it's like, more power to you, you know, like it's a free country if that's what you want to do. But I don't know, it's just kind of humorous because they have all the power. Like Republicans have all the power. They have the House, Senate, presidency, the courts. And yet, like, they can't even tolerate like one little area where, you know, he might say something that they don't like. And it's like, it's so offensive to them that, like, you know, they can't even watch a 10-minute halftime show without, we need to counter program this with Kid Rock and, you know, all these other country guys that nobody's ever heard of. And I think that part of it is very telling, where it's like they can't even tolerate one little corner of culture that, you know, disapproves of Trump. That's too much, you know. Yeah. So and I saw ESPN had a headline the other day. Yeah, ESPN had a headline the other day about, like, Roger Goodell sticks by Bad Bunny despite backlash, and it's like, what backlash? That Trump is upset, that Republicans are upset? I mean, it's not like he has some songs that are offensive or, you know, it's personal life sordid scandals. Like, there's nothing like that. It's just Trumpers getting up in their feelings. And so I'm glad the NFL stood strong. I will be watching Bad Bunny and not Kid Rock. And, you know, it's a free country, watch whatever you want. But I have a feeling that Bad Bunny will be more entertaining than Kid Rock.
Who you rooting for, the Patriots or the Seahawks?
I guess kind of Seattle, simply because Sam Darnold was the Vikings quarterback last year, and I'm sure he would have resigned here. We decided to go with JJ McCarthy, but, you know, I don't really have like a strong rooting interest either way. I will certainly be watching, and I guess if I had to pick, I'm kind of rooting for the Seahawks, but I'm not going to lose sleep either way.
Same, but the difference is this is the first year that my son and I are rooting for for the same team in the Super Bowl, and that's because he's been rooting against, like, the Cardinals. The
Cardinals,
but, well, you know, every time the Cardinals were in the the Chiefs. Every time the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl, he was whoever was playing against them, he was rooting against them. But we are now both rooting actively against the Patriots. So, go Seahawks!
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. Yeah, Jacob Fry is gonna be wondering where I am here, because it's kind of pressure packed. I got to do this panel with him, and I knew him from like a dozen years ago when I was a local reporter here, and he was a council member. But anyway, so I got to be on my
I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Defiant Weekly, and I hope you will join me again sometime.
I would love to do that. Maybe next time we can take some questions. I was looking forward to that, but we got to talking, so, you know, it was such an involved conversation. The wheel didn't come up that way. You know, it was luck of the draw. But appreciate you having me on. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you, brother. Good luck.
Take care.
And folks, thank you for joining me for another episode of the Defiant Weekly. I'm your host, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, aka BDD. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, since Aaron left early and he wasn't able to take any questions. I am more than happy and willing to take your questions. Let's see, the Trump Reaper saying the Patriots can go to hell. I am with you there. I don't know why I still have animosity against the Patriots. I think that's from the years when Tom Brady was there, and I was actively rooting against him, because I am a Giants fan, and my Eli Manning-led Giants beat the Patriots not once but twice in the Super Bowl. I know you guys are sick and tired. You Patriots fans are sick and tired of hearing that from the Giants fans, but, you know, that's it. Let's see. Meredith Powell says, ice out, stay woke, you damn Skippy. Wifey is doing well. She is recovering. I am doing the best I can to prevent her from lifting and doing any kind of strenuous physical activity. And it's tough because she's going a little stir crazy. She likes to stay busy. She can't even sit still for a movie, for crying out loud. What's for dinner? I have no idea. It's weird doing the show on Wednesdays, because it used to be pizza and movie night on Friday. So it won't be pizza. I don't know. I feel like something light, maybe a sandwich or something, you know? And yes, Tina, I did find a home for Goose. His home is right here. Yeah, I am a sap. I am soft-hearted, and you know, when his brother found a home or whatever, and it was just Goose left, I felt like my little heart was broken into tiny pieces. I was beside myself. I'm like, this poor guy, he's got no brothers and sisters left. And, we have an older cat. In fact, the cat that we found in our yard last year, Sonny, was the youngest. And that Sonny has kind of taken Goose under his wing. So now he's got a little brother. And he's adorable. I love him to pieces. So that's it. He's here. And I was like, we're not taking, we're not taking one more pet. No more pets. So it's one more. So we got one more. And Sherry Scary, glad to see you back here in the fold with us, my friend. She said she saw me on Pushing the Limits with Brian Shapiro. Have I told you guys how much I love Brian Shapiro? That dude is so much fun. I love watching him tear MAGA down. Oh, which by the way, so next week I'm going to have on the show Isaiah Martin. He's a Texas resident, and some of you may have seen him dismantle MAGA. He does this on the regular. He was on that debate thing called Surrounded, where like 20 you get to debate against 20 different MAGA, and he handled them. So I'm gonna have him here. He's running for office in Texas. He's gonna be here with me next Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to that and excited about it. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Defiant Weekly. I'm your host, BDD, aka Brooklyn Dad Defiant. And I look forward to seeing you guys here next week, back to the regular time, which is 6:30 in the p.m. So, I love you all. Peace. Incredible person, incredible human being. Yes, famous. Yes.